Today we uncover a moment of quiet unraveling in a therapist's office. You'll hear Mara's voice break as she confesses the numbness of her controlled life. She's the fixer in a house of scripted roles, where dinners hide the chaos and silence breeds rebellion. But peeling back that layer reveals something chilling: the risk of everything falling apart if the facade cracks. You will remember this. The camera's lens catches Mara in the dim glow of the therapist's studio. A handheld shot that trembles slightly, like a held breath. She's perched on the edge of a worn armchair, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. Practical, unadorned, the uniform of control. Behind her, a full-length mirror leans against the wall, its surface fogged at the edges from the room's quiet humidity, reflecting not her face, but a blurred silhouette, as if even the glass knows better than to stare too long. "I don't know where to start," she says, voice low, edged with that numb anxiety that coils in her chest like smoke from a dying fire. Her eyes flick to the mirror, and she sees it. The family, all of them, frozen in performance. Actors on a stage of suburbia, scripted by years of unspoken rules. Dad with his stoic jaw, Lena sketching her dreams in the margins of silence, and her, Mara, the fixer, the one who patches cracks before they show. We've all become so good at it, haven't we? This play of stability, where dinners are choreographed, words measured like medicine. One wrong line, and the curtain drops. The house of cards we've built, our home, our roles, it topples if I admit how thin my mask really is. She pauses, breath hitching, the anxiety thickening, numbing her limbs. Revealing the wounds means admitting they're there, festering under the composure. What if the truth shatters us? Simon's denial, Lena's quiet rebellion. They lean on this facade as much as I do. I resist it, this pull to peel back, because if I crack, who holds the pieces? But the words bubble up anyway, insistent, her voice softening as resolve flickers in, a gentle thaw. It's the thinnest layer, my mask. She confesses, leaning closer to the camera, eyes locking on the lens like it's Noor herself listening. I thought it protected us, kept the pain at bay. Let me steer us through the storms Dad never named. But it's suffocating. I see it now, in the mirror, every morning. Not me, but this version, distant and composed, afraid that if I let the hurt breathe, it'll swallow us whole. We're all actors here, playing safe. But what if the real act is staying silent? The distance between us, it's not protection, it's a wall. Her gaze drifts back to the mirror, where her reflection sharpens just enough to show the vulnerability in her eyes, raw, unguarded for the first time. The anxiety ebbs, replaced by a soft resolve, warm and tentative, like sunlight breaking through fog. She doesn't look away. The question lingers unspoken in the air between her and the glass. Can we remove these masks without the whole stage crumbling? Later that evening, the dining room light hung low, casting long shadows across the oak table that had borne 1,000 such evenings. Mara sat at one end, her fork tracing neat circles in her mashed potatoes, the steam long gone. Across from her, Simon methodically sliced his chicken, each cut precise, as if carving away excess words. Lena, to Mara's right, picked at her salad, her eyes darting like fireflies in the dimness. "So," Simon said, his voice a measured anchor. "Good day at the office?" The question floated out, polite as a placeholder, and Mara nodded, her smile automatic, a thin veneer over the knot twisting in her chest. She wanted to shatter it, to say, "This isn't us. We're all pretending the fractures don't ache." But the words lodged in her throat, heavy as the silverware clinking softly against plates. Tension simmered in the air, thick and unspoken, like humidity before a storm. Mara's pulse quickened. She glanced at Lena, whose fork paused mid-air, her gaze locking with Mara's for a beat too long, a flicker of shared unrest, a silent plea. "Say something," it urged. Mara's lips parted, but she closed them, the impulse retreating behind the familiar wall. The table stretched between them, a wooden divide etched with years of rehearsed civility. Its surface scarred faintly from forgotten arguments, now polished smooth. Lena tried a smile, tentative, her hand brushing the edge of the tablecloth as if seeking purchase. Simon cleared his throat, adding, "Weather's holding up." But no one bit. The clatter faded, replaced by the hum of the fridge in the next room, amplifying the void. Mara's chest tightened, the mask she wore. Calm daughter, fixer of fractures, pressing like a vice. Silence deepened, not peaceful but predatory, coiling around the room, threatening to swallow the fragile threads holding them. No one moved to fill it. The table loomed, a silent witness to the roles they clung to, its legs rooted firm while the air above quivered with what might break free. How many more nights like this before the weight proved too much? Days later, the screen flickers, a grainy overlay of faded Polaroids dissolving into motion. Mara, small and sharp-eyed at 8, stands in the dim kitchen of the old house, the one before the suburbs swallowed them whole. Her fingers twist the thermostat dial, click a notch lower, chasing the chill that seeps from the walls, from Mother's quiet sobs behind the bedroom door. "Keep it even, Mara," Dad had said once, his voice like gravel under tires. "We don't let it get too hot or too cold. Family stays steady." She remembers the heat of that summer evening, the argument simmering at the dinner table. Lena, just a toddler then, fusses with her spoon, banging it like a gavel. Simon, Dad, sits rigid, fork paused mid-air, eyes on his plate as if the peas hold the world's secrets. Mom's smile cracks, a hairline fracture, and Mara feels it first, the pull to smooth it over. She wants to scream about the knot in her chest, the way the air thickens with unsaid hurts, but the words stick like humidity. Instead, she adjusts the dial again, click, lowering the invisible temperature, her small hand steady as a surgeon's. "It's fine," she whispers to no one, to everyone. "I'll make it fine." Cut to winter, 10 years old, snow clodding the windows. The house hums with forced warmth, radiator clinking like a heartbeat. Grandma's funeral lingers in the air, unspoken, and Mara watches Simon pour coffee, his knuckles white. She aches to ask why he stares at the floor, why the silence wraps them tighter than scarves. But the lesson echoes, control the room, not the storm inside. She turns the thermostat up, click, flooding the space with dry heat that chokes her throat. Her own tears, swallowed, turn to steam. "We hold it together," she practices in the mirror later, lips moving without sound, the reflection blurring as if ashamed. Now, in the montage's haze, adult Mara's voice overlays, soft and probing, a confessional thread pulling the fragments taut. The dial spins in her mind's eye, that old brass guardian of fragile peace. She's been turning it her whole life, down for their rage, up for their grief, sacrificing her voice to keep the gauge steady. But here, in the reel of memory, the needle trembles. The suppressed vigilance of childhood sharpens into something insistent, a quiet resolve bubbling beneath the skin. What if she lets it fluctuate? What if she names the freeze, the burn, and speaks anyway? The images fade, the thermostat's click echoing like a question unanswered. How did I become the voice that silenced its own fear? In the following therapy session, The therapist's studio hummed with the soft click of a camera in the corner, its lens capturing the Ellis family in a loose circle of armchairs. Noor Patel sat forward, her dark eyes steady, flipping open her leather-bound journal with a deliberate creak that cut the air. The pages, worn and inscribed with faint notes, lay like an invitation on her lap, a vessel for words long unspoken. "You've all described these roles you play," Noor said, her voice calm but insistent, like a hand gently prying open a clenched fist. The strategist, the stoic, the quiet observer. But what if I told you these masks aren't just habits? They're wounds, layers of protection we build after hurt. But they scar us deeper over time. They keep the pain out, and us in. Mara shifted in her seat, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. She felt the words land like a spark on dry tinder. For years, her composure had been her armor, the thermostat she tuned to keep the family's emotional climate even. But now, hearing it named as trauma, not triumph, stirred something raw. She wanted to speak, to shatter the silence that had defined their dinners, their glances. "So, we just say it? Admit the mask is breaking us?" Simon cleared his throat, his broad shoulders tensing under his button-down. "This is therapy, not a confessional. We've managed fine without dredging it all up." His eyes flicked to Lena, who huddled deeper into her chair, arms crossed like a shield. The room thickened with their caution, the external pull of old rhythms, the fear that naming the hurt would unravel the fragile peace. Noor nodded, unperturbed, her pen hovering over the journal. "Managing isn't healing. Let's try. One truth at a time. Mara, what does that mask feel like for you right now?" She tapped the page lightly, as if coaxing ink from the air. Mara hesitated, the family's eyes on her like spotlights. Simon's jaw tightened. Lena's breath hitched. But beneath the wariness, a thread of something softer emerged. A cautious lean in, the first whisper of trust. Mara exhaled, her voice barely above a murmur. "It feels heavy, like I'm holding the temperature steady for everyone, but I'm freezing inside." The words hung, fragile. Noor jotted a note, the scratch of pen on paper a quiet anchor. Simon's gaze softened just a fraction. Lena uncrossed her arms. Were they ready to see control for the trauma it was? The journal waited, open, as the room held its breath. As the session deepened, the therapist's studio hummed with the soft click of a handheld camera in the corner, its lens catching the muted light filtering through half-drawn blinds. Noor Patel sat cross-legged on the worn rug, her journal open like an invitation, the family arranged in a loose circle. Simon rigid in his armchair, Lena fidgeting with a frayed sleeve, Mara perched on the edge of the couch, her posture a familiar shield. "Let's name them," Noor said gently, her voice a steady thread pulling at the quiet. "The roles you carry, not to judge but to see. Start with yourself, Mara. What do you hold for this family?" Mara's throat tightened, a cautious nod her first response. The words came slow, like exhaling fogged breath. "The fixer, the one who keeps it all steady." It felt like acknowledgement at first, light, almost relieving, as if voicing it loosened a knot. Simon murmured next, his baritone clipped. "The provider. The rock." Lena followed, softer. "The dreamer, I guess. The one who escapes." Noor nodded, her eyes warm, circling back. "And you, Simon? For Lena? For Mara?" Each label landed like a stone in still water, ripples brushing against Mara's skin. "The protector," Simon said, glancing away. "The one who taught us to adjust." Lena's voice wavered. "The sister who listens, but doesn't bend." And then Noor turned to them all. For Mara? The steady one, Simon offered. The thermostat. The air thickened. Mara watched her reflection in the small mirror propped on Noor's shelf. An antique thing, silvered edges framing her face like a frame from an old family photo. Her eyes met the glass, and the labels echoed back. Fixer, steady, protector. They weren't just words. They pressed in, definitive, carving the space around her chest. What started as a careful unveiling twisted inward, the circle closing like a vice. Breath shallowed, restrained, as if the rolls she'd worn for safety now bound her tighter, slicing the oxygen from the room. Noor's gaze lingered, expectant. But Mara only felt the mirror's unblinking stare, reflecting not just her mask, but the cage it built. Would naming them free her, or seal the bars if she didn't shift the voice behind them? The camera whirred on, capturing the hush. After the session, back at home, the Ellis kitchen hummed with the low drone of the refrigerator, a familiar anchor in the suburban hush. Mara stood at the counter, wiping down the granite with methodical strokes, her back to the room. The family dinner had ended 20 minutes ago. Plates stacked, silverware aligned, the thermostat on the wall ticking softly at a perfect 72 degrees. She adjusted it by a half degree, her fingers lingering on the dial, as if fine-tuning the air could steady the undercurrent she felt building. Lena leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, her dark hair falling loose over one shoulder. At 22, she carried the family's inherited poise like a half-shed skin. Creative sketches peeking from her notebook, a quiet rebellion against the polished edges. "Mara," she said, voice cutting through the quiet like a brushstroke on canvas. "Stop. Just stop fiddling with everything." Mara didn't turn. "The house is fine, Lena. It's under control." "That's the problem." Lena stepped closer, her sneakers soft on the tile. The distance between them felt vast, a chasm of unspoken routines. "You always do this. Twist the dial, stack the plates, keep us all at that exact temperature. But what about us? What about you letting someone in without managing every breath?" Mara's hand froze on the thermostat. The plastic clicked under her thumb, a small, futile resistance. She turned slowly, meeting her sister's gaze, those eyes, so like their mother's, sharp with the pain they'd both buried. "I'm keeping things steady. For all of us. Dad's way, remember? We don't let it get too hot or too cold." Lena's laugh was bitter, edged with heat. "Steady, that's your word for it. But it's not steady, Mara. It's you pulling away from love because control feels safer. You fix, you plan, you hold the line. But you're retreating. From me, from Dad, from everything real. What's behind it? That mask you're so good at wearing. What are you really afraid of if you let it slip?" The words landed like a spark, igniting the air between them. Mara's chest tightened, the pragmatic shell cracking just enough to let a flicker of rawness through. Vulnerability she'd armored against since childhood. She glanced at the thermostat again, its steady hum mocking her. For the first time, the idea pulsed. What if loving meant turning it off altogether? Risking the chaos of unchecked warmth? Lena softened, uncrossing her arms, stepping into the space. Not touching, but close enough that the distance thawed, tentative and alive. Mara swallowed, the question hanging unspoken in the charged silence. Was she ready to let go? Returning to the studio for another session, the camera lingers on Simon Ellis in Noor's studio. A muted space of soft lamps and scattered cushions, where the air hangs heavy with unspoken weights. He's perched on the edge of his chair, arms crossed like a barrier, his face a map of practiced stoicism, jaw set, eyes fixed on the floor. Mara sits across from him, her posture mirroring his. Straight-backed, hands folded in her lap, the fixer in her refusing to lean in. Noor, the therapist, leans forward gently, her voice a steady thread. Simon, these roles we've named, the overachiever, the stoic survivor, what do they protect you from? He scoffs, a sharp exhale that slices the quiet. Protect? This is just how life works. You keep it together or it falls apart. Therapy's for people who can't handle that. His words bounce off the walls, detached, armored. Mara feels the familiar chill. It's the same wall she's built, the one that keeps dinners civil and silences simmering. Inside, her chest tightens. Internal storm brewing, unseen. Noor doesn't push, just nods. Her journal open like an invitation. What if that together is a mask? What happens if you peek behind it? Simon's gaze flicks up, then away, landing on the mirror propped in the corner, a simple vanity piece, reflecting the room's half-shadows. He stares into it, and for a beat, the camera catches his reflection, eyes narrowing at the man staring back, lines etched deeper than he remembers. The resistance cracks, subtle as a fault line. His voice drops, rougher now. I built this because losing control meant losing everything. Back then, after the layoffs, the moves, if I let go, we'd all slip. No footing, just nothing. Vulnerability trembles in the admission, his hands unclenching, fingers twitching as if grasping for solid ground. Let it out without the script. But it's her own voice that crackles to life now, tinny and distant, pulled from a late-night entry she barely remembers making. I keep them at arm's length because it's safer, her recorded self says, the words slicing through the quiet. If I let the cracks show, everything unravels. Simon's denial, Lena's wild edges, they need me steady. Loneliness? It's not a cage. It's the only wall that holds. Mara's breath hitches. She leans forward, elbows on knees, fingers twisting the edge of her sleeve. The studio's muted blues press in, the air thick with the scent of old journals and chamomile tea gone cold. Her mind races, thoughts tumbling like exposed film reels. Why does it sound so hollow now? The recording continues, her voice fracturing. Dad taught me that. Twist the dial, keep the temperature even, no floods, no freezes. But God, it hurts to pretend the chill doesn't seep in. She pauses the tape, but the echo lingers in her skull. Distance, that's her armor. The pragmatic mask she's polished for years, the family fixer, thermostat of tempers. Yet here, in this sterile confessional, the lie glares back. Loneliness isn't protection. It's the wound festering under the bandage. Her chest tightens, a knot of resistance uncoiling against her will. If I admit it, what then? The stability I built crumbles, and they see me raw. Fear coils tighter. Fear of the unraveling, of Simon's stoic flinch, Lena's unfiltered gaze piercing her facade. Noor's journal lies open nearby, pages whispering of roles named and shed. Mara restarts the recording, her voice now a plea. What if staying distant just echoes the silence he passed down? What if the mask is the real fracture? The words hang, unanswered. She removes the headphones, stares at the device, symbol of truths captured, inescapable. A tear traces her cheek, unbidden. The distance cracks, just a hairline fracture, pulling her towards something raw. A breakthrough, tentative, where vulnerability breathes. Can she hear it fully, without the old justifications? The camera holds, the question suspended in the frame's hush. Inspired by this realization, Mara gathers the family once more. The camera hums softly in the corner of the Ellis family dining room, its lens capturing the familiar tableau. The polished oak table stretched like a silent battlefield, laden with half-eaten plates from what was meant to be a routine dinner. Mara sits at the head, her hands flat on the wood, fingers tracing the grain as if mapping an escape route. The air feels thick, laced with the scent of cooling roast and unspoken rituals. Simon shifts in his chair across from her, his fork hovering mid-air. Lena fidgets with her napkin, eyes darting to the window where suburbia glows in muted twilight. Noor, the therapist, observes from the edge, her journal closed like a held breath. Mara's voice breaks the hush, steady at first, then cracking like thin ice. I've spent years at this table, turning the dial on all of us. Like that old thermostat in the hall, keeping the temperature just right. No one too hot, no one too cold. But it's a lie. The camera zooms in, handheld and intimate, catching the flicker in her eyes. She leans forward, the table's edge pressing into her palms. I'm tired of fixing, of being the one who holds it all in so we don't spill. My pain. It's this weight I've carried since I was 8. Twisting knobs to make Dad's silences bearable, Mom's absences invisible. It's loneliness dressed as control. And I can't do it anymore. A beat of detachment lingers. Simon's jaw tightens, his gaze fixed on his plate. Lena's shoulders hunch, as if bracing for the old script. The family ritual teeters, the table now a crossroads, its surface scarred from years of measured meals, demanding they choose. Cling to the illusion of calm, or let the air shift. Simon clears his throat, voice low. Mara? But she presses on, her choice blooming raw. Join me. Name it with me. Not as roles, the fixer, the stoic, the dreamer, but as us, wounded and real. Vulnerability softens her edges, breath easing into something open, breathing. Lena's hand inches across the table, tentative, brushing Mara's. Simon's fork clatters down, his eyes meeting hers, not in defense, but in quiet unraveling. The camera pulls back, the table framing them in fragile unity, a space no longer controlled but inviting. Noor nods faintly, but the question hangs. Will they trade the masks for this shared honesty, or let the evening swallow it whole? As the ritual unfolds, the family dinner table, scarred from years of silent rituals, now held a fragile hush. Forks lay abandoned, plates pushed aside like discarded scripts. Mara sat at the head, her shoulders no longer squared in command, her breath coming shallow and unarmored for the first time. The air felt thick, not with the usual tension of unspoken rules, but with something softer, tentative. A collective exhale waiting to happen. Lena broke the silence first, her voice a whisper threading through the dim lamplight. I always thought if I stayed quiet, you'd see me anyway, Mara. But it was like shouting into fog. Her eyes, usually darting away, met her sister's, glistening with the fear she'd buried under sketches and half-finished poems. No accusation, just the raw edge of it. The old mask tugging, urging her to retreat into creativity's safe isolation. Simon shifted in his chair, the wood creaking like an old confession. His hands, calloused from overachieving fixes, clenched briefly on the table's edge, a symbol of the steady surface they'd all policed. I taught you to tune the thermostat, Mara, because losing control, it scared me more than the cold. His words trembled, not with defense, but vulnerability. The stoic father cracking open to reveal the boy who'd learned denial as survival. The table seemed to breathe with him, its familiar grain now a map of shared fractures rather than barriers. Noor watched from the corner, her journal closed, a quiet witness as the family's detachment thawed. Mara's chest rose and fell, unguarded, as she absorbed their words, not as threats to stability, but as bridges. Lena reached across the table, her fingers brushing Simon's, and for a moment, the room warmed, fears voiced in tenderness rather than control. Yet the pull lingered, a shadow of old habits, whispering to rebuild the walls. Mara leaned forward, her voice soft, unmasked. I thought holding it all kept us safe. The question hung unspoken in the air between them. Could this new softness endure without the defenses they'd worn like second skin? The camera lingered on her face, capturing the gentle rise of her breath, the family's eyes reflecting a budding trust as the evening light softened the edges of their world.